Okay, so you want to know how tech is really changing education, right? Not just the surface stuff, but like the deep dive stuff. So we've got a lot to cover with your stack of sources here. A book about social media and AI in the classroom, research papers going way back, and even a philosopher's thoughts on all this.
What I find so interesting is that it seems like every few years there's this big promise that some new technology is going to completely revolutionize education. It's almost like a pattern we see.
Yeah. It's like that feeling you get with a new phone or something. You think it's going to change everything. I remember when they said radios were going to change how we learn, and then films, then TV. They even thought VCRs would be revolutionary. And yet, well, here we are.
The thing is, it's not really about the technology itself. It's all about how we actually use it. The limitations we see in education, they aren't about what we can show students. It's about what's going on inside their
Oh,
minds.
that's a good point.
Like if you imagine you're trying to fill a cup, but the cup's already full,
Right.
you can keep pouring and pouring, but it's not going to make a difference if it's not being absorbed right.
Makes sense.
Okay.
That actually reminds me of some of the research in this stack you gave me about how animation isn't always better than just using static graphics when you're trying to learn something. Sometimes you just get too distracted by all the flash and you miss the point. Like sometimes less is more, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's like they say the medium is the message. It's easy to get caught up in how exciting a new tool is, but you have to stop and think if it's the right tool for what you're trying to do.
Bro.
And that actually leads us perfectly to social media, which I know you wanted to talk about. I mean, it's gone from this thing you just use to connect with your friends to this huge learning space, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
It's not just funny videos anymore. Think about it. Educators are using Facebook and Twitter. They're even on TikTok now.
Right.
Imagine being able to connect with other teachers all over the world on Twitter. Like you could share resources and get feedback on your projects right away. That's the kind of power that social media has for education.
It is. It's all about connecting and working together with other people. Students can use it to connect with other students all over the world. They can share what they're learning and even get feedback in real time.
Right.
But of course, it's not all perfect. There's a reason why people say it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on the one hand, you have this amazing tool for learning new things. But on the other hand, you have to worry about things like privacy and cyberbullying. And let's be honest, it can be really distracting. It's hard to focus on a history lesson when you know there's a hilarious meme just a click away. It's definitely a balancing act to figure out how to use it right.
And what's interesting is how social media is affecting education differently all over the world. Like one of the sources have mentioned that over 90% of people in Israel use Facebook. Can you believe that?
Wow.
That's huge. It basically means that schools in Israel have to figure out how to deal with social media because it's such a big part of everyday life.
That's wild. It makes you think about how we can teach kids to use the internet and social media safely and how to use them for good and not bad stuff. It's definitely a challenge for teachers.
It is. It adds a whole other level to teaching. But speaking of adapting to new technologies and making education more personal, let's switch gears to something I know you were really interested in: artificial intelligence.
Yes, AI in the classroom. Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the possibility of learning that's completely personalized. AI could even grade your papers for you, and it could make lessons fit your exact needs.
Exactly. No more having to go through stuff you already know, right? AI can figure out what you already understand and then just focus on teaching you the things you need to work on.
Exactly. It would totally change how we learn. But before we get too excited about all the cool things AI can do, there's something we should probably talk about, especially because you always like to think about the big picture of education. It's something called Bloom's taxonomy. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I think so. It's about like different levels of learning or something, right?
Yeah. Basically, it's like a staircase, and each step is a higher level of understanding. So you start with just knowing basic facts,
Okay.
and then you have to understand what they mean, and then be able to use them and then analyze them. And at the very top, you get to create something totally new with what you've learned.
Oh, I see.
And this is where some experts are saying AI might not be the perfect solution.
Really?
Yeah, they're saying that AI is probably going to be really good at those first few steps, like giving information, making sure you understand the basics, even grading you based on some rules. But when it comes to those higher level skills like thinking critically, solving problems in creative ways, and like those aha moments we get,
Right, right.
AI might not be able to do that as well.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's like AI can help you climb the first few steps, but to get to the top and really become a master, you still need those human skills.
That makes a lot of sense.
which reminds me of that philosopher we were reading about, Neil Postman.
Oh, right.
He was really focused on how important deep reading and critical thinking are, all those things that make us human, the things that technology can't really replicate.
And that we shouldn't be so quick to just hand all those things over to machines.
Exactly. We need to stop and think about what we might be losing if we just focus on efficiency and automation. So it makes you wonder, if education needs to change in this digital world, shouldn't we maybe rethink how we measure learning? Are standardized tests, which are mostly about memorizing stuff, really the best way to see if someone understands something in a world where information is everywhere?
That's such a good question. I mean, what if instead of focusing on just memorizing things, we focused on those higher levels of thinking that Bloom talked about?
Huh.
What if we had more projects where you could actually use what you learned in real life situations?
Yeah.
Or what if we focused on how well you can think for yourself, come up with new ideas, and explain your ideas to other people?
Those are really interesting things to think about.
Yeah.
So I guess the main takeaway is that technology is changing education, but it's up to us to decide how. It's not just about the cool new gadgets, but about what we want education to be like in the future.
Absolutely.
And that's something we all need to be thinking about.